With me now, former Assistant U.S. Attorney Kim Whaley. You can follow her Substack, The Little Law School with Kim Whaley. Also here, former federal prosecutor who quit over the decision to dismiss the case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams, Ryan Croswell. He is running for the Democratic Party's nomination in Pennsylvania's 7th Congressional District. And National Security Attorney, there he is, Mark Zaid, representing several clients that are suing the administration. Thank you all for being here on what appears to be another interesting legal Friday night. Mark, I want to begin with you because there's a lot of conversation around what Comey ought to do in response to an indictment. And two things have come up: vindictive prosecution and selective prosecution. These are two separate concepts requiring two different things. Tell me what your approach would be if you were to represent Comey. Either of those things or neither? Both?
Oh, I think both certainly can be assessed or alleged. They're very difficult generally, and my two colleagues that are on the panel there with you will know much better than I about that. I mean, the vindictive prosecution in particular is writing its own every time Trump and his allies speak, tweet, comment, whatever. I mean, they're just serving it up on a dish. I've practiced somewhat before the Eastern District of Virginia. It's a very no-nonsense judge who's there. He'll hold both sides' feet to the fire, but I don't think he's going to put up with a lot of comments that are being made sort of extrajudicially by the parties. If I was one of his lawyers, and I am not, I would be fighting this as well in the public domain to some extent as the lawyer, but I would be really careful with that because let them make the mistakes. So much of this administration, it's what gives us the ability to do what I'm doing in the civil arena in federal court, are unforced errors. Could you imagine, and I'll finish with this, if the indictment had been issued without any of the hullabaloo that had been made by Trump and the others, the prosecutors firing, anything, they had just issued grand jury indictment of the 2 counts. All of the rest of what we're talking about might not exist. They could still argue about it, but none of it would exist if not for what they have done publicly.
Well, let's talk about that self-inflicted wounds that could actually come up, Kim. And just for the audience's sake, selective prosecution, meaning that there were other people who were similarly situated like you, and the government, for whatever reason, chose not to prosecute them, but chose you. The vindictive requires a specific animus against you, and you're acting on that. The tweets, the comments that Mark is talking about, many people think fall under the umbrella more so of the vindictive prosecution of sorts. But talk to me about those tweets, those statements. What impact will those actually have in the long run for a judge who will undoubtedly entertain a motion to dismiss based on either?
Well, both of them really relate to this question of a fair trial. They get to the question of due process. And there's, I think, also an issue about whether he can get a fair jury with the Trump, the president saying all these terrible things about him. But essentially, the law gives prosecutors a presumption that they are acting in good faith, that they're doing things by the book, and therefore it's a high burden to demonstrate that you're either being chosen for something like your race or some other protected characteristic, or in a vindictive way because you're being politically targeted. The fact that the president is saying these things, I think, is direct evidence. It makes it very, I think, unusually direct for the defense to make that argument. That being said, remember, Laura, last summer, the Supreme Court in Trump versus United States, in giving presidents immunity, specifically said that directives to prosecutors, even if they potentially are illegal directives to prosecutors, give Trump and future presidents complete immunity from any kind of legal accountability. So for a lot of reasons, not just because of this indictment, but I think largely because of what the Supreme Court did, we're in a post-rule of law presidency.
But hold on, Kim, on that point, that would mean you couldn't go after Trump for a prosecution because of immunity. But the idea of being able to dismiss a case based on that, is that distinct from what the Supreme Court said about immunity?
I think the question's going to be, if the directive comes from the president, I think this Supreme Court believes has this unitary executive power, almost like a king, can exercise his discretion in this unlimited way. And if that discretion includes making directives to people below him, I think there might be an argument that is persuasive to this Supreme Court, if something like this were to get to the Supreme Court, that there's an umbrella sort of immunity that sort of bleeds into some of the lower level prosecutors if the directive came from Donald Trump. We're in uncharted territory here.
We really are. I mean, Ryan, the president is already warning that there are more indictments on the way. The New York Times reporting tonight the DOJ is looking for information on Fulton County DA Fani Willis. We remember, of course, her role in his own prosecution. Here's what the Attorney General Pam Bondi said tonight.
Whether you're a former FBI director, whether you're a former head of an intel community, whether you are a current state or local elected official, whether you're a billionaire funding organizations to try to keep Donald Trump out of office, everything is on the table. We will investigate you.
Obviously, those seem pretty pointed and specific. You can almost follow the line to who they might be intimating they're talking about. How are you seeing the scope, the speed in which this is all taking place? Of course, we remember you left your job because of the way in which the decision to dismiss a case against Mayor Eric Adams. How does this all play for you?
Laura, it's a continuation of the abuse of power I witnessed firsthand, which led me to leave the job that I love and run for Congress here in Pennsylvania. I think this is unprecedented in American history. You have a president who put out an enemies list, essentially, then prevailed upon his attorney general to pursue one of the people on that list, which he did. And now you have the attorney general saying that there'll be more to come. And I think the most galling part about all this was that Pam Bondi also said no one's above the law, except we know that's not true. Eric Adams is above the law. Tom Homan is above the law. Apparently anybody in the Epstein files is above the law. And really anyone who's a friend of Donald Trump's is above the law. At the same time that they're pursuing these charges against James Comey, I have no doubt that he will not be convicted.
Really? Why are you so sure?
Because of this. Well, first of all, I think that there's going to be a very valid selective or vindictive prosecution motion that just may stop this in its tracks. But the facts are contradicted by the IG's report, and it's being brought by a U.S. attorney whose previous experience is an insurance attorney, whose first indictment was so sloppy, the paragraphs were misnumbered and there was 2 count twos. And it appears she has to go this alone because no one else in the office was willing to do it.
Mark, on that point, and of course, we understand that I believe she was in the grand jury herself, which is really to have the U.S. attorney be handling a case like that in front of a grand jury as opposed to a line or career prosecutor. It might speak volumes given the last turn of events over the past few weeks. But let me ask you this, the federal judge that's assigned to this case, a Biden appointee, we know how quickly a judge is identified based on which president has appointed them, and then we're supposed to discredit them based on that. I'm saying in the, we in the sense of the sarcastic way. But the idea that Trump has already labeled this judge a crooked Joe Biden appointed judge, what does that tell you? And what do you know about that judge?
It tells me he's setting this up in case, if not maybe the likelihood, as Ryan references, and people like Andy McCarthy, who's well to the right conservative, who's written how these charges will likely be thrown out. He's setting the stage for that attack, at least to his base, throwing them some meat, that he can blame the failure, if that's where it goes, on the crooked Biden appointee. As I said, this judge has grown up in the Eastern District of Virginia. He clerked for one of his colleagues when he was back in an early young lawyer. He was involved or worked in the public defender's office for many years. He was then a magistrate judge appointed in 2015, where he served for 6 years and then became elevated up to a district judge. He's got a lot of experience. He knows this district and how the law is to be interpreted very well. And it's unfortunate that we're hearing this, who appointed the judge.
Yeah.
We had a case dismissed against the New York Times just recently, days after President Trump filed a civil case in Florida in the Middle District, which was a judge he appointed. So there are many judges, and even Chief Justice Roberts has said, please stop with the, who appointed. That's not how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to, as we heard earlier, we're talking about the rule of law. And that's what all of us, I know, as lawyers are, so wedded to.
Kim, really quick, I mean, Comey has already come out to say, let's have a trial. Talked about his heartbreak for the Justice Department, but wanting to have a trial. I know he wants to be outspoken. Would you advise him to stop speaking?
I think we're in a new era here. Normally, that the advice is not to talk about the case in particular, but I think he understands this is a shot across the bow. It's a warning to people to not cross Donald Trump. It has massive implications for the rule of law, for democracy, for individual rights, for freedoms. And also add, state of mind, this idea that he made a false statement knowingly 5 years ago on a Zoom during COVID. There was lots of confusion around that transaction or that conversation. It's a very difficult, the prosecution has to prove his state of mind. So I think he's probably pretty confident, given his experience, that proof beyond a reasonable doubt is going to be tough here.
You got to have that very definitive through line for a case like perjury. Ryan, final question to you. Do you think that you will see more resignations from DOJ based on what's happened here?
I do, Laura. Something I predicted, I think, on an earlier appearance on your show. I think morale is down. I think that people don't want to be a part of that, and that's really scary. And one final point. This district, the Eastern District of Virginia, has handled some of the most important terrorism and espionage cases in this country's history, and this is what it's been reduced to. It makes us all safe, and it's why, as Mr. Comey pointed out in his comments, we all need to vote. We all need to deal with this in the ballot box, and we all need to get rid of the congressmen who are allowing this to happen, including here in PA 7 in 2026.
Everyone, thank you for joining. Up next, it is the video that cost an ICE agent his job.